Good afternoon, Americans. This is your private alien and Bubba. On today, Wednesday, or Thursday, May 9th, Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. Sorry. And stand by for commentary. Well, today's commentary is on the Palestine situation going on there. And all these calls and protests that you have pro and con. Ceasefire! Yeah. And today's comment is on what started it all. UN Resolution 181. Now, you got to go back a few years. UN Resolution 181 is what started all this mess, okay? And this is a United Nations that didn't know what the hell they were doing. Because let me go one by one of what happened here. When the United Nations voted on Resolution 181, they had all these plans in that resolution. They were going to make Jerusalem kind of a Terran city there. And the problem was that you had two factions here, one that didn't like it and one that wanted to push it all over through. The Jewish had a very much what they used to call Zionist at the time, and they went overboard and did a lot of pressuring, threatening, and all kinds of stuff on them, okay, to the UN people. One of the persons that complained, even though his country voted yes for Resolution 181, was the President of the United States, Harry "Give 'em hell" Truman. And he actually complained, and he made it this vocal, that this is the first time he's seen so many pressure and so much arm twisting and threatening going on for this vote, even to him. So if you're threatening and arm threatening the President of the United States, and because, the Jewish controlled a lot of the things in the States, they still do today. You can't get, that's not anti-Semitic or anything, that's just the truth, okay? And the Zionists during that period of 1948 were doing that. And the Arabs were steadfast. No way, Jose, are you getting through this, okay? So they were doing their own twisting of their own. Now, mind you, at the time, 1948, there was only 56 members of the United Nations. 56. And the final vote for 181 was 33 yay, including the United States, even with President Truman's comments. He decided to vote yes, but he wasn't happy about it. Then you had 13 nays, and that was led by Prime Minister Nehru of India, who a year earlier had gone through this mess with its own partition. And it was fighting a war with Pakistan at the time, because it infuriated that he told the UN in no uncertain terms, this is what you tried a year ago, and look what's happening here. And you're trying it again. By the way, his resolution was never implemented either. Resolution 181 was never implemented. And why? Because as soon as the vote was, which was 33 yay, 13 nay, 10 abstentions, and the rest of them didn't show. That made the total of 56. So 56 countries decided to 70 some years later that were still hanging around here. And they did the same thing there. They had, if you read Resolution 181, and you see what they wanted to do on the partition, which never got done because as soon as they voted on that, war broke out. And Israel got the territory that it did. It's not necessarily what 181 said you were supposed to have. And the Arabs got the territory that they could handle, not necessarily what was meant for them under 181. Neither side won. Both sides lost, and both sides were involved in a perpetual conflict. It's what we got here, a perpetual conflict. Transjordan was evolved since 181 into the state of Jordan, plus that little thing that looks like a axe at the end there, the little round thing that today is called the West Bank. But that was people from Palestine. The Jordanians are unique because they were associated with the Iraqis. Okay? Now, over on the other side, the Gaza Strip. Why did Resolution 181 created the Gaza Strip? That's what you have to ask the United Nations. They're the ones that caused this mess. Read Resolution 181. It never got implemented because the war started and Israel won in mid-1949. The status quo stayed. And there was a lot of bickering over the status quo because Jerusalem became half Jewish and half Arab. The Eastern Jerusalem and the Western Jerusalem. And it stayed that way till the 1967 war. Israel didn't attack it in 1956, in the war that they had then. They were concerned about the Egyptians and Gamal Abdel Nasser, so they landed with the French and the British, who, the British had lost Palestine, and they had just lost the Suez Canal in 1952 because Gamal Abdel Nasser had nationalized it. Yeah. So therefore, what you have today is what the war in the territory ended at the War of 1949. And that wasn't a war because it was just a conflict. It resumed in 56. It ended in 56 because another president of the United States, Dwight David Eisenhower, forced it to end. So the United States had two blunders there. President Truman for vying to the Zionists and saying yes to the 1948 agreement that was a disaster. Prime Minister Nehru, who absolutely, positively was angry because they redid it. A year later, what they did to India, they did it to the Palestinians. It doesn't matter if you were Jewish or if you were Palestinian. It was the same way with India. Whether you were Hindu or Muslim, you got the same problem, and you got Pakistan and India. Just like you got the Palestinians in Israel. Jordan was a state that didn't want to be involved in anything, even under King Hussein. But it had to abide by the, because it was an Arab state. It didn't want to go against the other Arab states. Egypt under Gamal Abdel Nasser wanted to form a greater united Arab republic. And it had already gone in with Syria to form the United Arab Republic. And the UAE, I believe, was part of it too. You see, Americans, this is what I'm saying. This is the problem. Two presidents. One was twisted his arm into signing 181. That was President Truman. And he didn't like it. And he made it a point to tell you that he didn't like what was going on. But in diplomacy way, he bowed to it. And President Eisenhower, who interfered in the 1956 issue, which angered the French and the British and especially the Israelis. They had already occupied Sinai. So what did they do 11 years later? They redid 1956, and this time there was no United States intervention. They controlled the Sinai, and they controlled the West Bank and got rid of East Jerusalem. And poor Jordan suffered huge losses on that war, because King Hussein had no other choice but to join the Arabs because Israel had declared war on June 5th. Yeah. This was an Israeli war. And then 6 years later, Anwar Sadat decided to turn the tables on the Israelis and declare war on them on their holiest day, Yom Kippur. Okay? And who lost? Well, the Palestinians lost, just like they did in 56, 48, 67. They lost big time here. And the Israelis kept the Golan Heights. And all this is related to Resolution 181, which was passed by the United Nations and forgotten because it was never implemented, which is a terrible mistake to have. And now you're asking for ceasefire. And like I'm telling you, and I'll tell you again today, President Biden, you have no business doing that. You had two other presidents that tried to get involved, and they paid the price. President Truman paid the price, and President Eisenhower paid the price. What you should do is get together with whoever is funding Hamas and say, you don't fund them, we don't fund Israel, and see who lasts the longest. But that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is read Resolution 181 and try to eliminate Resolution 181. And this is the United Nations that's got to do this. Every single nation that belongs to this joke called the United Nations should get together. You caused this mess. It's up to you to get it resolved. Eliminate Hamas and tell the Israelis that Mossad has no right to interfere in the Palestinians' affairs. You eliminate Hamas, Mossad has no right to go into the Palestinians. And the Palestinians signed we are a non-aggressive people. We open our borders and we seek defense if somebody attacks us. We will not attack anybody else. Do you have the guts to do this, Palestinians? Really? Because that'll put Israel right where you want them. They'll have to abide by the borders and abide by humanity's version. And you got to set that up on the United Nations. You haven't set that up. What is it to be human? Human rights, but not human rights. Human guarantees is what you should set up. Human guarantees. This is an alien from another planet telling you, what the blank are you guys thinking? A ceasefire is not going to do any good here. Did the 2014 ceasefire do any good? The 1973 ceasefire? No, because you went into Lebanon in 1982 and it caused problems. Egypt and Jordan are the ones that are losing the most because they got a treaty with Israel, and the Palestinians are making that treaty a heck of a lot to sustain with their rocket attacks. And they're not even united because the West Bank has different aspirations than Gaza. And I don't think the West Bank wants to operate under Hamas, do they? Really? And you people that are come from either the West Bank or Gaza, who are Palestinians living here, and people like Talib, Arabs, you have no right to go protesting here. This is the United States. They had a hand in this, yes, but they weren't the cause The root cause of this. The root cause of this is Resolution 181 that the United Nations got to look at and come up with another resolution to fit what's going on there. That's the only way you're going to get rid of this conflict. And it has to be suitable to both of them. It just can't be, we vote on this and you have no say either side on it, like you did for Resolution 181. This is your favorite alien and Bubba, seeing it from an alien's point of view, extraterrestrial's point of view here. Good day.